I drank quite heavily and very frequently for about 15 years. And when I say frequently, I mean every single day. The only times I didn't drink, there were some days in 2017 that I know for sure I didn't drink. And I discussed in my last video why I couldn't drink, but that was it. Other than that, I drank every single day. It didn't matter if I was sick, if I was well, if I was on medication that I was not supposed to drink with, antibiotics, any of that, didn't make a difference. I drank regardless. Zero discipline when it came to drinking alcohol. It was an everyday thing. Now, when I say I drank quite heavily, I drank as heavily as I possibly could have to have drank for 15 years. I know that when I say heavily, that's a very subjective thing. Some people drink all day long, drink a lot more than I did. But how much I drank, I consider heavily. It took me about 2 days, 2.5 days sometimes, to get through a handle of liquor. And I never drank through the day. Well, I'm not going to say never. That's not true at all. For the most part, I drank at night. After work, I would, start drinking in the afternoon and then drink till way later than I should have, late enough to make for a difficult morning the next morning. But generally speaking, I didn't day drink. Now, on days I didn't work, I did, but I never, had to have alcohol in my system at all times. Never got to that point. In fact, I would have never made it 15 years had I drank that much. And here's the proof. I'm going to tell you a story, and this is the story of what made me quit. Or it's not really what made me quit. There's a little more to it than that. But this is the event in my life that started me on the road of sobriety. And you're going to want to wait and stick around until the end, because there's a very good point to be made in all of this. A very good lesson out of all of this. I know that this story is very specific to my experience, and it's not going to be relatable to probably anybody, but you're going to want to listen to it because, again, very good point at the end. So in 2023, just about 3 years ago, almost exactly 3 years ago, within probably 2 or 3 weeks from right now, I found myself in the hospital. The reason I found myself in the hospital is my appendix ruptured. And if you know anything about appendicitis or your appendix rupturing, you know that you have no choice but to go to the hospital. So found myself in the hospital to have emergency surgery due to my appendix rupturing. And when I showed up to the hospital, I was not in great shape. And the reason for that is because of how much I had drank, for how long I had drank. So I was in bad shape. I actually just earlier today looked at my intake paperwork. They gave this all to me when they discharged me, but they gave me, the sheet of what was wrong with me when I showed up to the hospital. And the list went well beyond appendicitis. I will put a picture of that on the screen right now. There's some words I can't even pronounce, but it was obviously more than just appendicitis. Now, I had sepsis without septic shock. I had what they call acute kidney disease. I don't even know what that is, but I know for sure that was alcohol related. That had nothing to do with my appendix rupturing. So I was in way worse shape when I showed up to the hospital than your average patient with appendicitis. And I ended up staying in the hospital for, I want to say it was about 3 weeks. And more than 2 of those weeks, I was in the ICU. And the reason for that is because I was in such bad shape from what alcohol had done to my body over all of that time, that my body was not wanting to heal after the surgery. So I actually had 2 surgeries. When I showed up to the ER one afternoon, by early the next morning, they were doing surgery to remove my appendix. And it wasn't 24 hours later, the surgeon came back and got me because he needed to do more exploratory surgery because he knew that when he was in there, things were not looking great. So, he ended up doing another surgery, and that, he got things fixed up, but they did a pretty good job while I was in the hospital of never letting me know just how bad of shape I really was in. I do remember that surgeon when I had a follow-up appointment with him when he was checking like my wounds out and everything like that several weeks after I got out of the hospital. I do remember him asking me, like, he just man to man, he's like, why'd you let yourself get that way? He knew. He knew there was no hiding it from him. He saw the damage that I had done to myself. And, I had no good answer for it. It's just, out of habit and drinking alcohol every day for that long, I'd pretty much destroyed myself. And he told me straight up, there's no good reason why I should have really been able to survive all of that. Even a basic surgery, I was in that bad a shape by the time I showed up to the hospital. So I end up getting discharged from the hospital. They give me some medications that I've got to take. And while I'm in the hospital, like I said, I was in there for 3 weeks plus, a little more than 3 weeks, I want to say. I honestly don't even really remember, but I'm pretty sure it was a little more than 3 weeks. That was the longest I had gone in 15 years without drinking alcohol. And no, I didn't feel great because, I was in pretty bad shape from the appendicitis and the surgeries. And, I'm on all these medications. There's a lot of pain and, stopping drinking. That was not the way to do it to instantly feel great. But I was medically supervised when I stopped drinking. And when I told them how much I drank, and I am sure that I grossly underestimated, or, I'm sure I was not completely honest about the amount I drank when they were taking me into the ER. And even then they were like, look, if you feel any kind of way, you need to let us know. There is medication we can give you, because if you just stop drinking cold turkey when you drink quite a lot, your body gets used to it. There's all kinds of complications. You can have a stroke. It can literally kill you. So luckily I was in a medically supervised environment. I never got to a point to where I felt like I needed to tell them, hey, I feel like I'm going to die. Give me something because I'm having severe alcohol withdrawal or anything like that. So I thank God for that. But I had gone the longest I had ever gone since I started drinking 15 years prior to that point without drinking. And ironically enough, what got me into that addiction, or how do I say this? The thing that kept me in that addiction, ironically, is what made it so easy for me to stop. And the reason for that is because my mind, I've learned this about myself, is like a light switch. I am either completely obsessed with something or totally uninterested. There's like no in between. And everything I do to 11. And, if I'm interested in it. If I'm not, I want nothing to do with it. And what I'm trying to say is, when I started drinking, that's what I did. I drank. That was my life. That's what I did. That's how I filled my time. I really enjoyed that time. I hate to admit it, but yes, like, I had some good times drinking. I met some good friends. It was, I don't regret that part of life, especially because of the lessons I've learned from it. And I'm blessed through the grace of God that I survived the whole thing. I'm not happy about what I did to my body, but thank God it was able to heal. But anyways, all that to say that that the idea that my mind is like a light switch, I'd just gone the longest I had ever gone without drinking. So I'm like, well, let's just keep this thing going. I was on some medications that I wasn't supposed to drink with anyways, and I was totally fine by the time I got out of the hospital with not drinking. When I was in the hospital, I didn't feel like I needed to drink. It was just not an option. I had bigger fish to fry, I guess you could say, while I was in the hospital. But I decided to take that and run with it. And I literally just made the decision, look, I'm done drinking. I don't want to drink anymore. I know that this nearly killed me. And by the time, I got off all the medications that were kind of, making me loopy and everything, there were nights I'm laying there in bed, and of course I'm doing, because I'm obsessive about things, I'm watching YouTube videos and reading articles and blogs and things about, stopping drinking and things like that. And, what I did learn is, about my liver, which was definitely affected by that much alcohol, and obviously my kidneys too. But your liver is the one organ in your body that can heal itself. However, if it gets to a certain point and you get cirrhosis, it can no longer heal itself. It just gets to a tipping point, in the same way like type 2 diabetes works. Like, you can be almost diabetic, but once you're diabetic, you're diabetic. Now, then you can do some things to manage it and stuff like that. Same with your liver, but ultimately, your liver can completely heal itself, regenerate itself until you get to a certain point. And I didn't know if I had gotten to that point or not. That was very scary, very scary. I remember, praying to God, like, look, just heal me, everything in me. I knew that I had a lot of healing physically to do. And that was it was almost 6 months probably by the time I had another appointment with my just general practitioner to, do normal blood work that I do every year. That was a long 6 months not knowing if my liver was going to ever regenerate itself or be able to heal. I didn't know if it was too late. And thank God, when I went to that appointment, my general practitioner, he had no idea I had gone through all this, which I probably should have reached out earlier and everything, but that's just how I am. Anyways, I just waited and went to my normal routine appointment 6 months after I got out of the hospital. And, I had lost a lot of weight and all of my blood work came back so much better. I mean, I had hypertension, which is high blood pressure, prior to stopping drinking. I was on some sort of cholesterol medication, some other things, and all of those numbers came back. And he's like, wow, what happened here? You've lost a lot of weight. You've, all of these numbers are good. You don't need your blood pressure medication anymore. You don't need this cholesterol medication. You don't, he's like, what happened? And I told him, I said, I quit drinking. And he's like, oh, and before I even told him that, he told me, he said, your liver functions normal, which was music to my ears. That's what I was really waiting to hear about. But it was all very good news. So in short, yes, my liver did not get to a point to where it was not able to heal itself. However, I was as close as I possibly could have gotten to that point. And because I had done damage to my kidneys and other functions of my body, me ending up in that hospital was pretty much the end of the road for me. If I would not have ended up in that hospital for appendicitis, I probably would not be alive today. The biggest takeaway from all of this is I was blessed enough to have something totally different intervene in my life. My appendix rupturing probably had nothing to do with alcoholism. Maybe it did. I don't know. I don't care either way. I'm not going to argue with success. But my appendix rupturing gave me an intervention that I didn't ask for, that started me on the road to making a decision that, hey, even if I've gone 17 days or whatever it was that I was in the hospital without drinking, why can't I go another 17? And with my mind being like a light switch, I decided, let me just keep this thing going. And the farther you get from it, the more you have to lose if you go back to it. So I kind of became obsessed with sobriety in the way I was obsessed with drinking. So I knew that every day was a day farther from drinking, and then you get to like 6 months and you're like, why would I have a drink now? It's been 6 months. Why would I want to ruin that? Do I think I can drink now and never go back to drinking the way that I did? Absolutely. I know that now I could have a couple of beers. I've got the discipline. I could have a couple of beers and not drink every day like I did before. I've learned my lesson. But why would I do that? Why? Those couple of beers are not going to taste good enough or do anything to make me feel good enough to reset what I've accomplished now almost 3 years. So, going back to the biggest takeaway from this, not everybody gets some sort of second chance, an intervention, something that stops them in their tracks the way appendicitis did me and made me think about my health and my life and my future and make a decision. I can say that from experience because my brother didn't get that chance. My brother died about 2 years prior to that from the results of alcoholism. And the most dangerous thing about that is that he started drinking several years after I did. Alcohol literally killed him. I watched it kill him. I was in the room when he drew his last breath, knowing that alcohol killed him. He ended up having, there's a fancy word for it, but basically it bled out through his esophagus. Alcohol did that to him. He drank for, again, several years less than I did. The scariest thing about that, and my next video is going to address this, the dangers of alcohol and the mentality surrounding it while you're in that prison that you don't even know you're in, is that when he passed away, I never even checked up. I never even thought to quit drinking. In fact, and I will speak on this in my next video as well, I knew alcohol was going to kill me, and I was okay with it. Absolutely crazy to think about now, but it's true. So anyways, make the decision. Make the choice. If you're struggling with it, it's literally just a decision. It's that simple. Make the decision to stop drinking. If you need to do it medically supervised, I highly recommend paying close attention to that because you don't want to end up having a stroke or, worse. There is a situation where folks need to be medically supervised when they quit, but it starts with making that decision. You may not get that intervention that I had. You may end up like my brother ended up. He never even made it to his mid-30s, all because of alcohol. Good talk.